There's a particular kind of silence that echoes through the corridors of a child's heart when the one person who should represent strength, protection, and guidance simply isn't there. It's not the silence of peace or contemplation. It's the silence of expectation that has learned to stop expecting, of questions that have learned to stop asking, of a young soul that has learned to become its own compass in a world that feels fundamentally unsafe. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, made a profound discovery about father absence that changed everything we thought we knew about psychological development. He realized that when a father is emotionally or physically absent, something extraordinary happens in the developing mind. The child doesn't simply adapt to the absence, they unconsciously reorganize their entire psychological structure around a void that was meant to be filled by paternal presence. What makes Jung's insights so revolutionary is his understanding that father absence doesn't just create emotional wounds. It fundamentally alters the architecture of personality, the way we relate to authority, our capacity for intimacy, and our relationship with our own inner strength. The absent father becomes not just a missing person, but a missing psychological function that the child must somehow learn to provide for themselves. You might think this is simply about having daddy issues or struggling with abandonment. But Jung's research revealed something far more complex and profound. He discovered that father absence creates specific psychological patterns that can be traced through every aspect of a person's life, their career choices, relationship dynamics, parenting style, and even their spiritual development. Understanding these patterns isn't just intellectually fascinating, it's psychologically liberating. If you've ever felt like you're fighting an invisible battle with authority, if relationships feel simultaneously essential and terrifying, if you've achieved external success but still feel like something fundamental is missing, then Jung's insights about father absence might illuminate patterns you didn't even know existed. This understanding has the power to transform not just how you see your past, but how you consciously create your future. Before we explore these life-changing insights, if you're someone who values deep psychological understanding over surface-level explanations, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel is dedicated to exploring the profound truths that can genuinely transform how you experience yourself and your relationships, and every video builds on these foundational concepts that have the power to change everything. Now let's discover what Jung understood about how an absent father changes the psyche forever, and more importantly, how this understanding can become a pathway to unprecedented personal strength and authenticity. Carl Jung's understanding of father absence begins with his revolutionary concept of archetypes, universal patterns that exist within what he called the collective unconscious. The father archetype represents far more than a biological parent or social role. It embodies the psychological functions of protection, guidance, strength, and the bridge between the inner world of family and the outer world of society. When Jung studied individuals who had experienced father absence, he discovered that the missing father archetype doesn't simply disappear from the psyche. Instead, it becomes what he called a hungry ghost, a psychological void that continues to seek fulfillment while simultaneously shaping every aspect of personality development. The child's mind, in its infinite adaptability, begins to reorganize itself around this absence, creating compensatory mechanisms that will influence their entire life trajectory. Modern neuroscience has validated Jung's intuitive understanding in remarkable ways. Research shows that children who experience paternal absence or emotional unavailability develop different neural pathways than those who receive consistent paternal engagement. The areas of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, risk assessment, and social bonding show measurable differences. These aren't just psychological theories anymore, they're biological realities that can be observed and measured. The father archetype, in Jung's understanding, carries specific psychological energies that are crucial for healthy development. The father represents what Jung called the logos principle, the capacity for logical thinking, structured decision-making, and confident action in the world. When this archetype is missing or distorted, the child must find alternative ways to access these crucial psychological functions. Jung observed that children facing father absence often develop what he termed premature ego development. Forced to become self-reliant too early, they create strong, capable personas that can navigate the world effectively. But beneath this competent exterior lives a child who never learned that they could depend on strong, protective masculine energy when needed. This creates a fundamental split between outer capability and inner uncertainty that persists throughout life. The absence of paternal energy also affects what Jung called the anima in boys and the animus in girls, the contrasexual aspects of the psyche that govern our capacity for relationship and emotional connection. Boys without strong father figures often struggle to develop a healthy relationship with their own masculine nature, while girls may have difficulty trusting masculine energy in others or accessing their own inner strength and authority. Jung's clinical observations revealed that father absence creates what he called a father complex, an autonomous psychological structure that operates like a separate personality within the unconscious. This complex carries all the unmet needs, unexpressed emotions, and unfulfilled expectations related to paternal relationship. Unlike conscious thoughts or feelings, complexes operate automatically, influencing behavior and perception in ways that the individual doesn't recognize. The father complex manifests differently depending on the specific nature of the absence. The physically absent father creates different psychological patterns than the emotionally unavailable father, the critical father, or the abusive father. But all forms of father absence share certain common features. They leave the child without a reliable template for healthy masculine energy and force them to develop their own relationship with power, authority, and protection. What makes Jung's approach so powerful is his recognition that these psychological adaptations aren't simply pathological. They're the psyche's attempt to maintain balance and functionality in the face of a crucial missing element. The child who learns to be hypervigilant about emotional cues, the adolescent who becomes fiercely independent, the adult who struggles with authority, these aren't signs of damage, but evidence of the psyche's remarkable capacity for adaptation. However, Jung also understood that these adaptive strategies, while necessary for survival, often outlive their usefulness. The hypervigilance that protected a child from an unpredictable or absent father becomes anxiety in adult relationships. The fierce independence that helped an adolescent survive becomes an inability to accept help or support as an adult. The mistrust of authority that developed in response to paternal failure becomes a barrier to mentorship and growth in professional life. The psychological effects of father absence ripple through every aspect of personality development, creating patterns that Jung called constellations, interconnected themes that organize experience around the missing paternal function. Understanding these constellations is the first step toward conscious transformation of unconscious patterns. One of the most profound effects Jung identified is what happens to the developing child's relationship with their own personal power and authority. The father, in healthy psychological development, serves as the child's first encounter with benevolent authority, someone who has power but uses it protectively rather than destructively. When this model is absent, the child must develop their own relationship with power without a reliable template. Jung observed that this often leads to one of two extreme adaptations: complete submission to external authority or total rebellion against it. Some individuals with absent fathers become what he called eternal children, constantly seeking father figures in bosses, mentors, or partners, hoping to finally receive the guidance and protection they missed. Others become hyper-independent, rejecting any form of authority or guidance, because they learned early that depending on others leads to disappointment. Both adaptations represent the psyche's attempt to solve the same problem: how to navigate a world that requires both personal strength and the ability to work with others when your template for healthy authority has been damaged or missing. The submissive adaptation seeks to resolve the problem by finding external sources of strength. The rebellious adaptation tries to solve it by becoming completely self-reliant. Both strategies have costs and benefits, but neither leads to psychological wholeness. Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, becomes particularly complex for individuals with father absence. The normal developmental process involves gradually differentiating from parental influence while maintaining connection. But when the father is absent, there's nothing to differentiate from, creating what Jung called premature individuation. The child is forced to become independent before they've internalized healthy models of strength and authority. This premature individuation, often produces individuals who appear remarkably self-sufficient and capable, but who struggle with what Jung called conscious dependence, the ability to choose when and how to rely on others from a position of strength rather than neediness. They may excel professionally while struggling personally, or achieve external success while feeling internally empty. The emotional landscape of father absence is particularly complex because it involves mourning something that never existed rather than something that was lost. Jung recognized this as a unique form of grief that he called ontological loss, grieving for what should have been rather than what was. This type of grief often goes unrecognized because there's nothing tangible to mourn, yet it profoundly affects the individual's capacity for hope, trust, and emotional connection. Children who experience father absence often develop what Jung termed hypervigilance around masculine energy. They become extraordinarily sensitive to the moods, intentions, and behaviors of men, constantly scanning for signs of danger, rejection, or abandonment. This hypervigilance can become a superpower in certain contexts, enabling them to read people and situations with unusual accuracy, but it can also lead to chronic anxiety and difficulty relaxing in relationships. The impact on romantic relationships is particularly significant. Jung observed that individuals with father absence often recreate familiar dynamics in their partnerships, unconsciously seeking either to heal the original wound or to prove that their worst fears about relationships are justified. They might be attracted to partners who are emotionally unavailable, hoping this time to earn the love and consistency they couldn't get from their father. Alternatively, they might avoid intimacy altogether, convinced that getting close to someone inevitably leads to abandonment. Jung's understanding of projection becomes crucial here. Individuals with father absence often project the missing father onto romantic partners, expecting them to provide the security, guidance, and unconditional acceptance that should have come from their original father relationship. This places impossible pressure on romantic relationships and often leads to cycles of idealization followed by disappointment. The relationship with success and achievement is also profoundly affected. Many individuals with father absence become what Jung called achievement addicts, constantly striving to prove their worth through external accomplishments. They hope that if they achieve enough, succeed enough, or become valuable enough, they'll finally earn the approval and recognition they never received from their father. But no external achievement can fill an internal void, leading to a cycle of striving that never brings lasting satisfaction. Jung observed that this achievement orientation often comes with a peculiar form of imposter syndrome. Because these individuals never received consistent paternal validation, they struggle to internalize their successes. They may achieve remarkable things while secretly feeling like frauds who will eventually be exposed. The absence of early paternal mirroring means they never developed a stable sense of their own competence and worth. The parenting styles of individuals who experienced father absence often reflect their own unresolved father complex. Some become hyper-involved parents, determined to give their children everything they didn't receive. Others struggle with authority and discipline, uncertain how to set boundaries without becoming the harsh or absent father they feared. Many oscillate between these extremes, creating inconsistency that can perpetuate patterns of insecurity in the next generation. Jung's concept of the wounded healer is particularly relevant here. Many individuals with father absence become exceptionally skilled at understanding and helping others who have experienced similar wounds. Their own experience of absence creates profound empathy and insight into the needs of others who are struggling with authority, self-worth, or emotional connection. This can lead to careers in therapy, teaching, mentoring, or other healing professions. However, Jung also warned about the shadow side of the wounded healer phenomenon. Sometimes individuals become so focused on healing others that they avoid doing their own inner work. They might become therapists who can help others with father issues while never addressing their own, or mentors who can guide others towards strength while remaining secretly dependent on external validation. The spiritual development of individuals with father absence often follows unique pathways. Jung observed that many develop what he called a direct relationship with the transcendent, bypassing traditional religious authority structures that might trigger their father complex. They may be drawn to mystical or experiential spirituality rather than institutional religion, seeking direct connection with the divine rather than mediated relationship through paternal religious figures. This can lead to profound spiritual insights and experiences, but it can also create spiritual isolation. The mistrust of authority that developed in response to father absence may extend to spiritual teachers or communities, leaving the individual spiritually gifted but relationally isolated. Jung saw this as both a limitation and an opportunity. The absence of external spiritual authority forces the development of authentic inner guidance. The journey toward healing the father wound, in Jung's understanding, is not about finding a substitute father or repairing the original relationship. It's about developing what he called the inner father, a psychological function that provides the guidance, protection, and authority that were missing in external relationships. This inner father is not the same as self-love or self-acceptance. It's specifically the capacity to provide structure, direction, and benevolent authority for oneself. Developing the inner father requires what Jung called active imagination, consciously engaging with the father archetype through visualization, dialogue, or creative expression. This might involve imagining conversations with an ideal father figure, writing letters to the father you needed, or creating art that expresses your relationship with paternal energy. The goal is not to create a fantasy, but to internalize the psychological functions that healthy paternal relationships should have provided. Jung's approach to healing father absence emphasized the importance of conscious suffering, what he called holding the tension of the opposites. This means acknowledging both the pain of what was missing and the strength that developed as a result. It means mourning the father you needed while celebrating the independence you developed. It means accepting both your vulnerability and your remarkable resilience. The process often involves what Jung called withdrawing projections, recognizing when you're expecting others to provide what your father didn't give you. This might mean stopping the search for mentors who will finally give you the guidance you crave, or ceasing to expect romantic partners to heal your father wound. It means taking responsibility for providing yourself with the psychological functions that healthy fathering should have developed. Jung discovered that individuals who successfully navigate this healing process often develop what he called authentic authority, the ability to be strong without being dominating, protective without being controlling, and guiding without being manipulative. They become the kind of people they needed when they were children, not through compensation, but through genuine psychological development. This authentic authority is particularly valuable in leadership positions. Individuals who have healed their father wound often become exceptional managers, mentors, and guides because they understand both the need for structure and the importance of emotional attunement. They can provide clear direction while remaining sensitive to the individual needs of those they lead. The transformation of the father wound from liability to asset is one of Jung's most hopeful insights. He believed that every psychological wound contains within it the seeds of extraordinary strength. The absence of external paternal guidance forces the development of inner guidance. The lack of external protection cultivates inner resilience. The absence of external authority necessitates the development of authentic personal power. Jung's clinical work revealed that individuals who consciously work with their father absence often develop psychological qualities that those with healthy father relationships may never access. They become extraordinarily self-reliant while remaining capable of intimacy. They develop deep empathy for others' struggles while maintaining strong personal boundaries. They learn to provide for themselves emotionally while remaining open to connection with others. This doesn't mean that father absence is beneficial or should be minimized. The pain is real, the challenges are significant, and the healing work is demanding. But Jung's insights reveal that even the most difficult psychological circumstances can become sources of strength when approached with consciousness and courage. The ripple effects of healing the father wound extend far beyond the individual. Jung believed that when someone transforms their relationship with their own absent father, they contribute to healing the collective father wound that affects entire cultures. In societies where emotional absence, workaholism, and disconnection have become normalized, individuals who have learned to embody healthy paternal energy become agents of cultural healing. Modern research validates Jung's insights about the intergenerational transmission of both trauma and healing. Children of parents who have consciously worked on their own father issues show better emotional regulation, more secure attachment patterns, and healthier relationships with authority. The healing work done by one generation creates possibilities for the next that might not otherwise exist. Jung's understanding of father absence ultimately points toward a profound truth about human resilience and adaptability. The psyche possesses a remarkable capacity for self-healing and transformation, even in the face of fundamental losses. The absent father creates challenges, but it also creates opportunities for psychological development that might not emerge under more favorable circumstances. The key insight from Jung's work is that healing doesn't require changing the past or finding perfect relationships in the present. It requires developing a conscious relationship with the archetypal energies that govern psychological wholeness. The inner father can be cultivated through awareness, intention, and practice. The capacity for healthy authority can be developed through conscious engagement with power and responsibility. This process of inner development often attracts others who are doing similar work. Jung observed that individuals who are actively healing their father wound often find themselves in relationships and communities that support continued growth rather than perpetuate old patterns. They develop what he called earned security, a stable sense of self that doesn't depend on external validation or perfect circumstances. The wisdom that emerges from healing father absence is particularly valuable in our current cultural moment. In a world where traditional authority structures are being questioned and redefined, individuals who have learned to embody authentic authority rather than inherited or imposed authority become guides for collective transformation. They understand how to lead without dominating, how to be strong without being rigid, how to provide structure without stifling creativity. Jung's vision for individuals who have healed their father wound is not that they become invulnerable or perfect. It's that they become whole, complex beings who can access both strength and vulnerability, independence and connection, authority and humility as circumstances require. They develop what he called psychological flexibility, the capacity to respond authentically to each situation rather than reacting from unconscious patterns. The journey from father absence to inner wholeness is not a straight line. There are setbacks, periods of regression, moments when old patterns reassert themselves. Jung understood this as a natural part of the individuation process. Healing happens in spirals rather than straight lines, and each return to familiar challenges offers an opportunity for deeper integration and understanding. What remains constant throughout this journey is the gradually expanding capacity for self-compassion and authentic relationship. As individuals learn to provide themselves with the paternal functions they missed, they often discover they can offer others something they never experienced themselves. They become sources of strength, guidance, and protection for others who are navigating similar challenges. The absent father, in Jung's understanding, ultimately becomes a teacher. Not a teacher of abandonment or unworthiness, but a teacher of resilience, self-reliance, and the extraordinary human capacity for transformation. The wound that once felt like evidence of fundamental brokenness becomes a doorway to psychological wholeness that might not have been accessible through easier circumstances. For anyone who recognizes themselves in this exploration of father absence, Jung's message is one of profound hope. Your struggles with authority, your challenges with relationships, your internal battles with self-worth, these aren't evidence that something is wrong with you. They're evidence that your psyche is working exactly as it should, adapting to circumstances and seeking wholeness despite significant challenges. The path forward involves honoring both your wound and your strength, your vulnerability and your resilience. It requires the courage to grieve what was missing while celebrating what you've become. It demands the willingness to take responsibility for your own psychological development while remaining open to connection and support from others. Your absent father may have changed your psychological landscape forever, but you have the power to determine what that landscape ultimately produces. Through consciousness, courage, and commitment to your own healing, the absence that once felt like devastation can become the foundation for a life of unprecedented authenticity, strength, and meaningful contribution to others. If this exploration has resonated with your own experience, know that you're not alone in this journey. Every person who takes responsibility for healing their father wound contributes to the healing of our collective relationship with authority, power, and masculine energy. Your individual transformation ripples out to touch everyone you encounter, creating possibilities for healthier relationships and more authentic ways of being in the world. The absent father's greatest gift may be the invitation to become the person you needed when you were a child, not through compensation or performance, but through genuine psychological development that serves not only your own healing, but the healing of everyone whose life you touch.